So Tatiana Whitlock is the National Director of Training for a Girl and a Gun Women's Shooting League. She has trained with the top names in the firearms industry and prides herself on being a dedicated student of the craft. As a firearms instructor, she teaches nationwide, working with men, women, and youth to establish a real-world foundation of firearm skill, safety, and situational awareness. Tatiana is a member of the Walther Arms Defense Team, and she also serves as the Director of Training at Howell's Indoor Range and Shooting Academy in Gray, Maine. She is a featured host and instructor on Trigger Time TV, airing on the Pursuits channel, as well as a contributing author for numerous industry publications and the NRA Women's Network. That is quite a bio. I can't wait to talk to Tatiana. Let's bring her on. Hey there. Oh, you're muted. Let me unmute you. There you go.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show.
You bet. Well, who is that that you have with you tonight?
This is a very not sleepy little Miss Esme who has decided that she will be screaming from the other room unless she is joining us. So this is the best of all possible worlds, and we get an extra bonus little co-host.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, she might have something to say. You never know. So
It's entirely possible.
Well, let's get on with the show here. And let's start with, if you don't mind, just about a little bit more about your background. I know that was a lot in your bio, but I'm curious to know, how did you start your firearms journey and then end up becoming a firearms instructor?
It was completely by accident. I didn't know there was a firearms industry. I had no concept that there was a training community beyond, potentially like a women on target clinic at my local rod and gun club. This was completely by accident. I came to firearms at a time in my life where my first two babies were babies, and they were born 16 months apart. And immediately after the second, we had a lot of good things going on in our family. My grandmother was in hospice care, and we were wrapping up one family business, starting another. There was so much on our plates. And my ex-husband at the time said to me lovingly, but probably badly timed, one evening when things were all kind of blowing up and children were screaming and babies were being fed and all, the bewitching hour, that I really needed to get myself a hobby. And I was like, wait a minute, hang on a second. Of course, came from a place of love. It came from a place of, you need to do something for yourself. You have to have something that's going to feed you and keep you going through all of this insanity that just breaks you away, so you can do something for you. And coming from a fine art background, I have a degree in fine art, ceramics and painting and all of the things that most people would pick up as a hobby were already something that was already a part of my life. So I wanted something completely outside of my wheelhouse, something no one in my immediate vicinity or world could have a say or express an opinion about or tell me how to do better. And so I figured, well, it had been about 2 decades since I'd gone hunting with my dad and my brothers. So I wanted to go get my hunter's education certificate. I wanted to go get my license. I wanted to become proficient so that I could tell them, hey, let's go hunting again, like we did when we were little kids. And I had no idea that would prompt or lead me down this path. It started with an NRA Women on Target clinic, so I'm a huge advocate of those. They're phenomenal opportunities for women to gain access to a range and an experience that is so positive and safe and well organized. And that snowballed into traveling all over the country and learning beyond the state of Maine what other instructors across the nation had to offer, particularly to answer questions that, as my life story evolved, I started asking. So shortly thereafter, I became a single mom, and my questions went more from, well, how do I hit that bullseye at ladies' night, to, well, what does it mean now to have a firearm in my home with children in it? That was very concerning to me. And then, well, what does it mean to even conceive of the fact that if I had to defend myself in my home, what would that look like? Realistically, what would that look like? And then to a couple of experiences where me and my babies were, pursued and followed in a grocery store out to our car. And then from the parking lot, for about a 10-minute drive, this individual followed us through neighborhoods as I fished my way around. And that really and I was like, this is not a theoretical anymore. This is something that happens to other people. This is happening in rural Maine, in a town that I would have otherwise felt safe in. And now I
Hmm.
was aware of a side of humanity that perhaps I had ignored prior. And how did guns fit into that? And how did the lifestyle that I was creating for me and my children of safety and awareness, what did that really need to look like? So the teachers that I went to study with and who largely informed the work that I'm doing now had answers to a lot of those types of questions. And it was a unconventional education, bringing me up in guns. I did not have a normal, usual path into this. I went from NRA Women on Target to what Maine could offer, and then moving on to working with some of the guys when Magpul Dynamics was still a thing, flying out to Colorado to train with some of them, and then introductions to people like Pat Rogers and Super Dave Harrington and Dave Spalding and so many other incredible minds.
Hmm.
The entire suite and host of people at the Rangemaster in the Rangemaster community. It's an incredibly rich world of knowledge we have in this country, and I've been honored to be a part of them as a student and as a co-instructor.
Wow, what a journey. I did not know that story. So that is really, I'm sure
Mhm.
many people can relate to some of what you said. So
I hear that a
that
lot.
is, yeah.
Hear
Well,
that a
hi,
lot.
Adam.
So
What
jumping
a
in real
surprise to
quick.
see you.
So jumping in real quick before we move on, right? People need to know this, and we'd like to hear more. So Tatiana, as you know, I grew up in a French country, grew up speaking French. Your daughter has a French name. It
Yes,
to me is indicative of how thoughtful you are, and I think people need to know that. Can you tell us about the name?
sure. So her name is Esme Seraphine, which means or translates to beloved angel of fire. And
Wow.
So
she's pretty
cool.
spicy, so I think it worked out great.
So having
She
grown
didn't
up
get
in a
that from you, did she?
Oh, maybe a little.
So having grown up in a French country and being French fluent, that's a new word to me. I've never heard that word. I've never heard that definition. So that was incredible to hear. But folks, I mean, what a beautiful name and a lot of thought behind it. So listen to Tatiana tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good segue into what we were going to talk about next. I think it's interesting that when you go to your website, the first thing you see is training in context. So could you unpack that for us a little bit? Because that is a really important part, and we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper. But why is context so important to
Mhm.
your lifestyle and what it is that you're deciding to do as a concealed carrier and making the decision to carry, and unpack why you decided to have training in context?
You said the word, and it's why. I've always
Hmm.
been the person who wants to know the why. I love the technical. I'm an engineering nerd. I love the mechanics. I love to dissect things. I want to know what the fish ate. I'll gut the fish just to see what the fish ate. That's I'm a Mainer. We do that stuff. But it's really where the rubber meets the road is why am I doing this? Why would I even why perform that reload? Why take the corner that way? Why pay attention in this manner? And it all comes down to the motivation that we have to even pursue this material at the range at all. And that's the context in which we would apply it in our daily life. And I feel very strongly that if you can explain concepts and ideas from a place of relevancy to the student beyond the range,
Hmm.
visualization activities and exercises that are really personalized to that person, the assimilation of knowledge is so rapid. They grasp it, they internalize it, and they can put it to
Hmm.
work in a much
It
more
means
meaningful.
something to them.
Absolutely. And when
Yeah.
you're presented then, or when that student is presented with a complex problem to solve, accessing those tools or those concepts, those ideas, the skills becomes a much more natural and fluid progression because they understand why. They're not hunting amongst a multitude of cards to pick from. It
Hmm.
really resonates that this solution can be applied to these types of problems in the manner in which we introduce that knowledge. So
Hmm.
that's how I learn best. I
Hmm.
want to know how it works. I want to know why. I want to know. I ask for directions when I get lost. I will pull over and ask directions. Um, so, I found that that has been very successful in my own journey through this, especially as I did all the fun classes and stuff. I did
Hmm.
you know, tactical fantasy band camp with guns,
Mhm.
and I did the
Yeah.
dress up and multicam and run around with plate carriers. Oh my gosh, it is so much fun, and if you can do it, you should totally do it. I've done all of those fun things, and the
Yeah.
athleticism. Before tactical games, we were just bringing that level of athleticism to the range. When I was fit pre baby, we're gonna get there again. And all of that was fantastic and a very important and informative part of what I was doing. But truly, when I went home, how was I going to stage that firearm in my house? How did I
Mhm.
interpret my living space? How did I rearrange my furniture? And where did I put the nightlights down the hall? All of
Mhm.
those things that we talked about in classes, I literally was trying to bring home and put to work. And it was all about context. And the more I spoke with people, particularly women and young families coming to the table that were experiencing firearms and considering, they weren't committed, but they were considering bringing firearms into their life, they expressed the very same concerns, asked the very same questions. So, and it all came down to context.
Right.
And so I very
What does
strongly,
it mean to me in my life right now? And as you know, life changes, right? There are different chapters in our lives. So depending on where we are in our lives, things might change in how we decide to carry or stage things or whatever. Our mindsets might be different too. We're all on a different journey, and a different path.
absolutely.
But there are some parallels. So what are some of the whys that you hear or some of the concerns that you hear commonly?
Well, I'll share a story with you. There was a young woman in a class that I just recently taught, and she came in rather hesitant and a little apprehensive, as you would expect to a basic pistol for self defense class. And she shared a little bit more and more of her story as the 2 days of training progressed. From I'm new and I have this gun that my husband packed for me, down to the fact that her husband had just recently been shot in a drive-by shooting, and she has
Oh,
4 little children. So we're not talking about hypotheticals anymore for this individual. This is an
yeah.
individual who has, within the last year, experienced an ugly side of humanity, who has a very young family. And this is very real to this person. This is very, very real and palpable. So
Mhm.
everything that we did, from the types of reloads and why you would perform them and under what conditions, made sense to her. That made absolute sense to her. And the
Mhm.
stories we told about moving through spaces or solving problems within certain environments and distances that were relevant to her. So, for example, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15, 20, 25. What do those distances mean for pistol work?
Mhm.
They're convenient increments, is what they are. They're just
Mhm.
convenient range increments.
Mhm.
And that's not quite real. And that wasn't real for her. So we beg the question, what is the shortest distance in your home, right? From your pillow to your bedroom door. Let's take a short distance. What does that look like? Is it 2 yards, 2.5 yards? Okay. So now our up close distances are at that space. And take that mental snapshot of lifting your head up off the pillow, facing your bedroom door, and what does that look like? Right. So now let's think about, what could the longest shot in your house be realistically, from where you would
Mhm.
be working, sitting, standing, to where someone could uh, show themselves, right, or appear uninvited and make themselves known in that space. If you're at the kitchen island, is there a side kitchen door? Would it be across the living room? Do you have an open concept house? That kind of idea. For some
Mhm.
people, the longest shot would be top of stairwell to bottom of stairwell, for example, right?
Mhm.
And then an interim living space distance. So suddenly the distances that we're working are mean something. They mean
Yeah.
something, and you see yourself in that space. And that distance has relevancy now in a way that it hasn't before. And that was a very powerful tool for her, as it was for
Mhm.
some of the other people in the program. And that's
Mhm.
just one example of the type of thing that we do to build contextual relevancy within the work that we're doing.
That's so important. So important and not done very often, I believe.
I
At least
feel like it's
not in a lot of
trending.
classes I've taken in the past.
I feel like it's something that's trending now. I feel like it's something that's,
It's
um,
trending?
I hope it's catching on. I hope it's
Yeah.
growing. I hope we're building momentum.
Yeah.
It's always nice when people say that, you were a champion of this idea or this concept, and that's great. I appreciate somebody taking notice of that. But irrelevant to me. I would much prefer to see this kind of idea become mainstream. I think we all benefit from that. And credit isn't necessary. It's the momentum of it that's powerful. That's what makes me. It's like, yes, we're doing it. We're getting there. This is awesome.
Right. And we're breaking through to people, and they're understanding it from their perspective, because when they come to a gun class, yeah, of course they want to learn the things, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times they don't know what they don't know, and they're willing to admit that. But at the end of the day, they want to know, what does that mean to me in my life? You know? And that's a little bit different for everybody. So when you can help people realize that for themselves, that's so powerful.
Yes. And challenge them, because many times when we'll do a visualization exercise, male or female, I'll talk them through a scenario that is benign, leaves a lot to suggestion, right? That you can fill in the blanks, choose your own adventure somewhat. It often summons and triggers emotions from past experiences as they're going through this mental journey that they weren't quite prepared to face. And in that, we meet ourselves in interesting ways. Women are often the ones we expect are going to find an emotional trigger, but I'd say it's pretty 50-50 with individuals and classes. Because again, and if you're not having that kind of powerful emotive experience, perhaps we're not training in the right mindset.
Right. Yeah.
We, as instructors, we have to cultivate and train access to and championing through those types of emotions, because that will be there. That fear will be there should it actually occur.
Hey, Tatiana, can I go back to something you said that I think is so important? Interestingly enough, you and I have never trained together, and you just dealt with something that I put in my courses all the time and I'm pretty passionate about. So if I can go back to it, you talked about moving the furniture around, night lights, right? I'm always teaching in there how you got to look at your house in the way that if Mr. Bad Guy is looking at your house, if he was going to get into your house, which door or window would he come through? What's most likely? If that's not the most likely, what's the most secondary likely thing to happen, right? And then what's your furniture setup? Concealment, movement. Where's your night light so it's not in your eyes, but it might be somebody else. Do you mind going a little more into that? Because this is having seen it from the cop side, right? When I go to take the report, usually a lady's been the victim of a terrible crime. Do you mind going into that more? Because I think this is so important that though I teach it, I've not heard other people do this. So that you said that this is important. I'd like to go a little further if you don't mind.
Certainly. The way it was best described to me, what goes back years ago, I mean, this was one of the first conversations I had with a very prominent artist at the time. He went by the name of Stickman. And we had and he, did professional work within the law enforcement field as well. And he described the introduction of light and the ability to control light and how powerful a tool that was before I'd even heard of, light being considered a force magnifier and all of the weapons mounted, language that goes with it.
But it is.
It is. Environmental lighting was so powerful. And he said something to me that always resonated. He said, T, the devil lives in every dark hole. It's like, oh, well, when you put it like that, I'd like to light it. Thank you very much. And if I can control it, if I can see it, I can control it. I mean, we've been playing hide and seek since we were little kids. And if you were going to hide somewhere, where would it be? It would be the farthest, darkest corner, right? So to think that we innately as human beings understand that what we don't see, that's where scary things are, because we don't have the information. So the more information I have, the more light I can literally shed into an environment, the better decisions I can make. So whether it's weapons mounted, handheld, environmental, low ambient, motion sensor, light is powerful, and you cannot hide in the light like you can in the dark. And I don't walk around in plate carriers and night vision goggles in my house. I mean, I think that'd
be fun.
I mean, it would, but I'd need to get, to be able to move and maneuver without being surprised is great. I'd like to be able to have that control.
Yeah, so I would encourage people that think about where your nightlight placements are, right? My hot little wife, right? She's got these salt lamps that are set around the house. And they're set up in a way to where if somebody were to come through the primary ways they most likely would come in, it's going to backlight them and not be in my eyes. But it's not going to backlight me. So what I've seen too many times when I've done security assessment on homes or different businesses, they've set them up to where it would backlight them. And that's the worst thing you want, right? So the considerations of where you place your light, I think, is important, let alone, like you mentioned, weapon mounted lights, other things. Light can be your friend. It can also be your enemy. And so you've got to be very considerate how you set it, looking at, okay, if this person's coming at me with this way, what's the best lighting for me that helps me, not them? And it's just so important you mentioned that. But two, also, the setup of your furniture within your home. Ours is literally set up to where if I have to take a position of cover here, it could stop or impede a bullet if it were coming at me, or it could stop or impede somebody coming at me or my family at the same time and be a help for me versus a hindrance. So literally, as much as my wife is a fine decorator, it's literally set up for defense. And it sounds like you're advocating the same things.
Absolutely. And the other part of that story is it's much like pepper spray. Flashlights come with techniques that most people aren't aware exist.
Yeah.
And you can use pepper spray to a great advantage. You can use light to a great advantage. But if you don't have the proper training, then you perhaps will fall victim to all of the urban legends associated with those tools. And that is absolutely unnecessary. I've seen light deployed beautifully, and it is masterfully utilized, and it really is incredibly powerful. And then a rookie uses it and flashes it, and now I know where they are. Or they, do a cascade light instead of a direct lighting, and I know exactly what they have on for kit when I otherwise could have been blinded or temporarily disoriented to not know. People flashing themselves in mirrors, all of the bad habits that you need to know that there's an answer to it. So if you're curious about light, I encourage you to take a low light class from reputable people. And it's just truly mind blowing what an incredible tool that is that people just take for granted.
Well, you touched on something cool here, Laura. I'm going to bow out, but that was just so important.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, so this is another good segue, I think, into what I would say in the gun community. There is a large conversation about gear, right? There's a huge conversation about gear. The number one question I probably get asked from a new student, what gun should I carry? And then second is, then how do I carry it, right? But the gun is just a small piece of the puzzle of the entire, right? And you talked about contextual training. And I think it's important to bring this up because we give so much emphasis to the tools that we have, and the tools are important. But let's talk about for a minute what other pieces are needed in that puzzle to be well-rounded as a defender in general.
Well, the gun is typically where people start their journey because it's a very easy point of entry into this lifestyle. What happens is if they're exposed to a good retail experience, and by a good retail experience, I mean that they're recommended and fitted with a piece of equipment that's truly matched to them, not to the retail salesperson's preferences, but to the buyer's preferences, body, needs, budget, all of that stuff. We have the right fitting gun and we can get them into the correct type of holster. I'm going to drop a plug for my favorite holsters. They're Filsters, the Enigma. They look crazy and wild, but they're totally amazing. It's like the magic eraser of guns.
I'm a huge fan. Yes, huge fan.
Aren't they?
Yeah.
They're
I wear the Enigma every day.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So if I can just put a shout out there to my homies at Filster.
Yep.
They're really it's worth the energy and the investment of time to learn how to do it well. If they're introduced to that experience well, then the training story comes next. The training with firearms typically begins with basics course, then a concealed carry course, and then we see only about 2% of those individuals continue into further training. And that's heartbreaking, really, as an educator. It's heartbreaking. But those people are then going to walk down a journey of, all right, well, I need other equipment. The other equipment I need is obviously more concealment solutions, a wardrobe that is suited towards a concealment experience, greater range of motion, greater concealability, women are often looking at changing their footwear more than anything else in their wardrobe is footwear, right? Because
Makes
gone are
sense.
the stilettos, ladies, as a daily
Yeah.
wear option. You're changing out what you want to be able to move. I
Yeah.
see able-bodied younger people jumping into jujitsu to round out their other defensive skills and other forms of more martial than art styles of defense that are out there, sambo, krav, things that are more martial and less beautiful. That's, in the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I know. And then medical is the other topic that
Yeah.
people, it can become trendy. Everybody wearing a med kit on their belt and all of this stuff. But how many of you have actually taken the class and how to use it? That's always a great question in classes when people are all kitted out with the retail gear.
Mhm.
You got to have the skill to go with it.
Mhm.
Right?
I think she has something to say about that.
She agrees. And pepper spray. Pepper spray is
Mhm.
perhaps, or OC, the most underappreciated component of an everyday carry kit. And I see some trainers out there doing amazing work to dispel those myths and make it kind of more appealing. And, pepper spray, right? Who carries pepper spray? You got to be wimpy to carry pepper spray
Mm.
until you hear the legal argument for why you want to carry pepper spray.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
changes people's attitudes quite quickly.
Mhm.
So, Chuck Haggard, I know he's on the show or has been on the show before.
He's going to be. He hasn't yet.
Oh, you're in for a treat. His knowledge about that tool and that application is outstanding. So, to all of our folks watching, make sure you tune in for that one. The legendary lawman, Chuck Haggard.
I feel like we need some music to go along with that.
You should. You should really cue something up for
I
his
might
intro.
do that.
That would be
Oh, too much fun. Too much fun. All right. So, okay, we talked about training. Okay, we emphasize gear and guns and not training enough. I don't think. I mean, we as gun trainers, we emphasize it, but as a whole in the industry, I don't know that I would say the gear and gun. It's more fun to geek out on that stuff, right? For the most part. Everyone wants to
Well,
know,
it's
what are you
easy.
carrying, right?
There's a level of satisfaction when you go and buy something. It's like
Mhm.
you've attained something more, you've built something more. But I think in the training conversation, people really need to appreciate the fact that watching these podcasts is a component of educating yourself. It is a
Yeah.
component of training. Reading the books, listening to the audibles of phenomenal writers, like Amanda Ripley, Unthinkable, Varg Freeborn's books. And there's so many incredible contemporary writers speaking to this entire topic, not just of the buzzword mindset, but of the
Mhm.
reality of what it
Yeah.
means to
Yeah.
be in the defensive world and to adapt that into your lifestyle. It's a
Yeah.
huge, in addition to range time, in
Yeah.
classrooms.
Yeah, and so if you were talking to somebody who isn't carrying every day, you can hear me, right? Someone who isn't carrying yet, but who is in the consideration phase of it,
Mhm.
right? And they're curious about it. What would you tell them would be some of the steps to build up to carrying every day? Where should they begin? What does that look like?
They should begin by having fun. The concealed carry story is when you really look into it, it's very dark. It can be very
Mhm.
intimidating. Understanding the crime in your environment, if it's not already something that's very salient to you right now, when you start figuring that out, you don't really want to leave the house. So carrying concealed will open your eyes to the part of your world that you didn't want to see or you wanted to wish wasn't there. So it's important when you begin this journey that you find a way to have fun while learning those skills. So find a group. She agrees. Find a range with a culture that speaks to you. Find your people. If you're
Mhm.
a woman, find a girl in a gun chapter near you or something comparable. Find trainers that are answering the questions that are relevant to your life and follow them, study them. You have to keep it interesting and appealing, or you will lose your drive And within
Mhm.
6 months, I find people have just abandoned that gun that they purchased for with the hope, and they got the permit, they did the paperwork, and once they bought their permit, right, got through the permitting license, it's another kind of retail soothing investment. They kind of tap out because,
Mhm.
well, I've checked the necessary boxes and
Yeah.
I've learned a little, and I don't feel the panic or pang of fear
Mhm.
and urgency that I had when I first bought. So if you're not finding a way to have fun, that's something that's going to keep you coming back to the range, you're not going to do it. You're not going to
Yeah.
do it.
That's such a good point and so important. And so
Mhm.
what do you find are some of the biggest obstacles of why people don't carry, in your opinion? What do you think those are?
There are the obvious ones, like, does this gun make me look fat? You know, having to change your your wardrobe or perhaps your daily habits and routines. That's an
I
adjustment
just
for
find that
folks.
hard. I guess I have a different way of looking at that. That slight inconvenience of being a little bit uncomfortable once in a while. And and it's true. With the Filster Enigma and a good holster, I mean, I don't even notice I have a gun on anymore. But it was a process getting there. But it's hard to believe that that slight inconvenience is enough to make somebody quit or not carry whenever the reason why they're carrying is to protect their family
Mhm.
or their own life. I mean, I guess they have to keep thinking about their why, right?
You do. You have to. And I encourage people to put it on their home screen of their phone. You have to look at that phone a million times a day. And if you're presented with your reason why and you purposefully set that image to be your reason why, it will always be looking back at you when you choose to carry and when you choose not to. So it's a
Mhm.
constant little, gut check of it's worth the extra 30 seconds. It's worth setting your alarm 15 minutes earlier in the morning so that you go through your day having the tools you need, right? And I also
Yeah.
tell my students that you have already accepted the consequences of what happens throughout the day should you wear your gun and never need it, or wear your gun and find you do, or choose not to wear your gun and never need it, or choose not to wear the gun and find you wish you had. So
Mhm.
every morning that you get up, every time you leave the house and you make that decision, you have to have already accepted the consequences, good, bad, and ugly, of what's going to happen throughout the day. And do you have what you'd want? I mean, thankfully, I've not had to draw on a human being, but I got to tell you that med kit that I have on me, that Dark Angel kit, has come out for more car accidents than I can count,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I've given my pepper spray to a college student who came into the shop absolutely terrified and afraid, bought myself a new one. It's like your EDC kit is far more than just the gun, and many critical elements of it travel with you places where the firearm can't. So again, it's the bigger picture. The gun is just
Mhm.
a catalyst for a bigger life story, and
Mhm.
considering more of what you would need than just bullets. Bullets,
Mhm.
brains, and bandages. I think Kerry Davis says that best. That's kind of his
Yeah.
jam. He's right. He's absolutely right. But you asked the barriers to entry, and that's an easy one. The one that I don't think it's talked about so much is the social shaming element. The element where
Mm.
many people coming into this for the first time are discovering the reasons for them are very clear. But then they're getting judged. They're feeling the heat from family members, from coworkers, from people within their faith-based community, perhaps sometimes from spouses or children. And that is a huge deterrent. My family experienced it in the old community that we lived in. My kids were no longer invited to birthday parties or friend date play dates when the other families found out what I did for work.
You're
So
kidding.
nope, it was amazing. And then when COVID hit, shockingly, most of those families sought me out for training because they
Wow.
themselves felt the need.
She says, "Mom, it's bedtime."
Right. She agrees. Yeah. I know. I mean, she's wide awake. That's the problem. You are happy though. Yes, this predates you, so you lucked
No
out, kid.
sleep for mom tonight.
Oh no, this was normal soup du jour for me. But that the cultural side of this. There are communities in this country that are fully Second Amendment entrenched and enriched, and then there are other communities where you don't want anyone to know because, you know, for example, when I'll do a class photo, right? Do you know how many students don't want to be in the end of class photo because they're afraid their boss, they could lose their tenure. They work in the medical community, right? They are professionals in the law and they can't be seen in this class photo. This is a very real thing. Or women with personal protection orders out who really don't want to be seen or known to have been at the range, period. So that's a piece of this that many people don't even consider until you're in it for the first time. I mean, we're entrenched in it, right? We surround ourselves by like-minded people, but for the majority of the new gun owner out there, they're going to be hit with this that no one really adequately prepares them for. And that's a huge dissuasion.
So, Tatiana, I always struggle with the fact that I'm not sure how to appeal to people before they become the victim of the crime, right? Yeah. In the cop world, I saw victims of crime all the time. And I now find that probably about a fifth or so of my classes are full of victims of crime who've become the victim and then decided I'll never have that happen to me again. How do you recommend reaching the people you're talking to before they become the victim of crime? That's a struggle I have because I'd rather get them before than after. So what do you recommend?
There's always the an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure conversation. You know, there's you practice fire drills for the unlikely event that there's a fire. So this is another unlikely event. Let's take the fear away and say that, all right, you know, if you don't feel a sense of immediacy and urgency, then it's just good, you know, preventative maintenance. You go for an annual checkup. You should go for an annual basic pistol class. You should go for an annual stop the bleed class. Should be on your regular routine of benign things so that with a slow, low burn of exposure, hopefully we can make it seem less of a big deal. I wish people just didn't think it was such a big deal. And I hate to say it, but it took the peaceful protests to make large portions of our culture realize that, you know, we perhaps are more susceptible to things we didn't realize we were before, and how much can happen in our neighborhoods and communities that we've conveniently not been touched by or had to expose ourselves to. But, you know, we're in a rapidly and ever-changing and evolving country. And crime looks very different across the country now than it did 5 years ago in the communities that I was teaching in 5 years ago. What they're afraid of and what their concerns are this year, very different. And that speaks volumes. And perhaps it's just because now I'm paying attention to it that I see it. Perhaps this always has been the trend. But once your eyes are open, it's hard not to see.
It's so good to have you here. Thank you.
So guys, don't forget that we're almost through the hour here. So we probably should be transitioning soon into the Q&A. So if you have questions for Tatiana, be putting those in the comments so that we can gather those here in a few minutes. So Tatiana, a couple more questions before we transition here. What are some of your most commonly asked questions in a concealed carry class?
How come you carry such a big gun? That's what I get asked.
I get asked that too. Yeah.
You're a tiny lady. I'm 5'2". I've never been a big human, you know. I get we thought you looked bigger. We thought you were taller on TV when they beat me in person. That's one of the first comments I get.
That's funny.
Short. How can you carry such a big gun? That's normally the thing. So I carry a full-size Walther PDP with a Trijicon RMR and whatever light I want, you know, mod light du jour that I want to throw on there, or Surefire, right?
Yes. She likes that. It's a good
gun,
choice, Mom.
Right?
Big gun.
Yeah. That's the Italian in her coming out. So, and that comes down to, you know, concealment strategy and understanding the tools you have and the tool that is the holster in addition to the gun, and the fact that those two need to be in happy harmony. And if they are not, you're going to compromise and settle for something perhaps subpar. So I get that question a lot. I'm constantly taking my rigs off and having loaner rigs and throwing my gun and all my gear onto other people, and it's, you know, that's a pretty normal thing. We tune it as best we can for them, and then they're all online ordering things at lunch. That's normally how that goes. Yeah. And then other questions that I have are related to children and how to transition the firearm throughout your day if you have little kids. That obviously has been relevant to me as my children came first and guns came second. And then as I went through pregnancy with this little bugger, what that looked like is concealment changed through all 4 trimesters. There's 4 now. The last time I was pregnant, there were only 3. Apparently now there's 4, right? Like the things we learn, right? Science is amazing. And what, you know, chain of custody and home safety, that as it relates to concealment. Those are the questions that I get the most. And there's strategies for all of that. And again, it can be unique to your family and your lifestyle and the age of your children and if there's special needs or not. And there's a solution for everything. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is, that's hard to unpack on with 15 minutes left in a show. There are good questions, I think, that need to be answered, but guys, these questions can't be answered in a quick 30-second, spiel on a show. Some of these things can only be answered through you learning, studying, becoming educated on the topic, seeking out good training, and then asking yourself, how does that apply to me? And having people that you can bounce ideas off of or questions off of. And because I had probably 3 or 4 commonly asked questions here, Tatiana, and I realized it's probably going to take a while to unpack some of these. They don't have quick silver bullet answers. And that's the thing about concealed carry or about having a defender's lifestyle. There is no silver bullet, so to speak. And it's a different journey for everyone. So I think that's important to know. Let's see. Are there any common misconceptions or myths or pet peeves, perhaps, that you have? Look at the smile on your face. Pertaining to concealed carry or women in carrying or any of those topics?
Oh my gosh. All right.
Take it away.
Let me pick a couple. Well, the obvious misnomer is you're female, you have small hands, you're weak, you need something easy, you need something small. Small in size, small in caliber, and with your tiny woman brain, let's just keep it to revolvers, right? And don't get me wrong, I love me a wheel gun, and I'm loving that wheel guns are, revolvers starting to come back in vogue, and there's some really great stuff coming out. Like Caleb Giddings is doing some awesome stuff, and Daryl Bulkey, and there's a whole group at the Pat Rogers Revolver Roundup that just, if you need to know about revolvers, you need to look that up, and everybody who teaches there. That's just what it needs to be. That being said, breaks my heart when I see a lovely older lady come in with a J-frame, like light, airweight, little miserable hand cannon, baby fire-breathing dragon revolver, snub-nosed thing, right? And she's got knobby arthritic hands, and she's got failing vision, and we've got macular degeneration going on, and she can't see, and she can't hold on to it. I had one lady hold, literally, her skin was so fragile that recoil just bouncing on her skin from that little revolver broke her skin, and we were bleeding all over the gun. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, can we, please, well, I don't want something complicated because it's got too many moving pieces in a semi-automatic. My argument there is, listen, you drove a car here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts there. There's a lot to be responsible for. A lot of buttons, a lot of levers, a lot of situational awareness. And you didn't run anybody over, I hope. And you obeyed by all the laws, and you stopped at the stoplights and the red lights. And you went from the green, you slowed on the yellow, and you made it here. And this semi-auto is exponentially fewer parts, much easier to operate. And if it breaks down, you don't need AAA. I can teach you how to fix it. And that tends to change attitudes fairly quickly. I'd like to see more work done at a retail level to educate our retail sales folks around the country into how to properly fit people with firearms. We've got so many phenomenal choices across a lot of different manufacturers now, more than we ever have for right-handed, left-handed. I mean, there's so much now, right? There's small,
Yeah.
medium, right? We've got it all, right?
Yeah.
That there's it can be overwhelming, but there are some outstanding products. And if you can put the right person in the right gear, you can make a good shooter a great shooter. And the struggle isn't there. There's no struggle. It's a natural progression. So I think that women are the ones who are sold the wrong guns right out of the gate, and that's largely why we don't see them return, because they have a terrible or negative first experience.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I feel what you're saying. I totally do.
Yep.
And we all have our holster bag of shame too, right? I mean, like I said, I am all in with Filster Enigma and Haven Defense Co., which is on our partners page. Guys, I believe in those two companies wholeheartedly. I use their products daily. And I do everything with that holster chassis system. It has changed everything for me. And thanks to Adam Winch for introducing me to that. So the good news is spreading, and that is really a game changer. So I'd encourage you guys to look up Filster holsters if you can. And
Yes.
their YouTube channel is so educational about concealment too. They have really good videos on there.
Yes,
So
they do.
good information. And we want to point you guys to good information all the time, anytime that we can. Let's transition over into our wins of the week. I'll share mine first, and then we'll get into Q&A. If you guys have any questions for Tatiana, put those in the comments. So my win of the week this week is my win of the week was being invited to teach a group near and dear to my heart called the Montana Maggies, and they gave me a hat this week. I didn't wear it. It's not broken. I have a thing with hats. They got to be broken first. But this is the Montana Maggies logo, and they are really near and dear to my heart because they're an all-female training group here locally, and they're led by an inspirational woman named Trish Reese. And Trish is the person who took me under her wing when I very first started learning to shoot. And in fact, she was my very first instructor. And her mentorship throughout the years has led me to new places and new journeys and new things. And it's really, really powerful and important to have those kinds of people in your life that can help you. And so I owe a lot to the Maggies, and I owe a lot to Trish. And but over the last year or so, there's been circumstances that have made it so that I can't train with them every week anymore. And so I don't get to see them very often. But this past week, they invited me to come teach. And I got to pour into these wonderful women. And I spent the first 5 minutes just hugging all of them and crying. It was like, it's sad to admit that, but it was more like crying of gratitude, tears of gratitude and love. Like, they're just wonderful people. And when you find your tribe, as you talked about earlier, Tatiana, when you find your tribe and you have a group of people around you that really support you, that makes all the difference in the world. So for me to be able to give back to them was my win of the week. So I don't know if you have one or not. I'm going to go through some of them here. Do you have one?
I do. So I do
Great.
a youth program at my home range, and I've been putting a bunch of the kids through the NRA pistol marksmanship qualification. And I had one young man burn through the pistol wall like it was nothing, shot it clean. I mean,
That's awesome.
100% perfect, and is almost done defensive pistol one, and he's shot it clean. I am so proud of him.
Wow.
Win of the week goes to this young man. He is a
Yeah.
shining
That is so cool. I love that.
star.
Let's see who's shouting out their win of the week. Thanks for the acronyms. That really helps Adam. He needs to be able to see who's win of the week. So Kathy says, my win of the week is I'm working toward being a more processed focused shooter. Yes, that's perfect. That's what we talk about all the time instead of being outcome focused. You'll be much happier that way, Kathy. Clint's win of the week. It's been about 2 weeks since I've done any training. I took the Mantis pistol marksmanship test and got a 96%. Wow. Good
Nice.
job. Yeah. Our audience is very engaged. They're out there training and doing good things. Anna Marie says, I was part of a company-wide downsize after being employed for 27 years. I landed a fantastic job this week where my employer is a 2A supporter and a Christian. That is a win. That is such good news. Congratulations. And Scott's win of the week this week. My mom's 87th birthday is today. Happy birthday to your mom. And Adam's one of the week. I got to compete with some fifth group SF guys and another guy and lady who had just competed in a national competition, and I sort of kind of held my own against them. That's great. Kara shot my very first IDPA match this past weekend. That's great.
Fun.
How did it go? Did you have fun? Most importantly, did you have fun? That's great. Okay, well, looks like we've got just a couple questions. If you guys have anything, we're going to wrap up here. I love you too, Wendy. Wendy's one of the Maggies. I love her dearly. I love all of them. And I didn't even cry about it tonight, Wendy. Aren't you proud of me? Okay. So Kathy wants to know, Tatiana, will you talk about your role in developing the PDPF for Walther?
Sure, absolutely. So Walther invited myself and a bunch of other, pretty much everybody on the Walther Defense Division, who is now a part of that team anyway, independently a couple of years ago to give feedback on what was the development of the original PDP. And they were very receptive and took all of our feedback and put it to work. They actually re-engineered the gun to our suggestions, which was incredible. I've never seen that before. They did everything.
Wow.
And they alluded to the fact that they wanted to dress and do something for the women's market. And so they brought me back to the table, Gabby and some of the other ladies, Michelle, and we all, I'm getting kisses, from all of our own perspectives, because we're all concealed carriers and we all had kind of participate in different facets of the industry and understand women in all of those genres. I love you. I love you too. It's really and so what we ended up doing was taking the PDP, all of the phenomenal features that went into the PDP, and sizing them, scaling them, tuning them for a woman's hand, right? So with our ergonomics in mind, with our answering our problems, addressing the issues that most women have. And as a result of that, the end result was the engineers at Walther put together the answers to all those questions, and it became the F series. So reduced reach to the trigger, i.e. a smaller grip circumference. So you're not fighting to find the front flat face of the trigger anymore. The ability to actually get to the mag release, people. Isn't that some shimmy acrobatic move to get to the mag release? I mean, that is life-changing. It's a lot of tiny tweaks, a lot of tiny little things all put together that really created that answer that became the F series. And if you look at it, it's, it was designed with a woman's hand in mind, but it really is a PDP slim. It's a slim version, a slightly more tuned version of the base PDP, which is an outstanding gun. I love mine. I carry both of them, and they're phenomenal. Another thing about the F series that is not really, I don't think, talked about enough is we did reduce the forces necessary to rack and manipulate the slide. So one of those are, and it's not radical. It's not, I think it's a 30% reduction, but just that little bit of reduction has changed. Now I have a gun that is full size that an older person with arthritic hands can manipulate, where they were going to be out of the game for a full size gun otherwise. So
that's really good to know, because that's a really common problem I see.
Yes. Yep.
Reduced interesting. Good. Good to know.
Yes.
All right. I don't see any other questions. Adam Moore has one here. Would you tell us about your part in A Girl and a Gun?
Of course.
Could you talk about that?
I am the Girl and a Gun's National Director of Training, and I have been for quite a few years now. And it has been one of the most life-changing things I've ever done, was accepting that position. I thought I knew what I was doing, and then I met thousands of women across the country who welcomed me into their learning experience and into their lives and friendships, into their communities. And it's given me an opportunity to completely changed my perspective on firearms, on what I thought I understood America was all about, all the different cultures across our nation that I never would have understood truly.
Mm.
And it's just it's an incredible organization. It has created a really safe, welcoming, and well put together experience for women who are looking to gain entry into the shooting sports. And I talked about it needs to be fun. You need to find your people. You need to find a space that's going to motivate you to come back to it and continue that journey. And A Girl and a Gun has evolved into such a powerful force in the education space,
Yeah.
largely because of the community that it creates. And I'm not talking about happy hugging and, like girly group. Like
Yeah.
this is a bunch of like hardcore ladies that get together and burn it down, like don't let like Girl and a Gun ladies show up to classes with some of my peers and I get phone calls and they're like, hey, we had your ladies in class and they really did amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the norm. And that's starting people from zero and bringing them up through whatever genre appeals to them so that they can realize those goals. So to be a part of that is just profound. And to see that organization grow, it is growing. It is changing rapidly. We've got a lot of incredible programs in the works going into already dreaming about into next year and what we're going to be offering and how we're going to be building up our leadership and the programs we're offering for our membership. So, my own classes are something that I can offer on a small scale across the country, but A Girl and a Gun really allows me to participate at a national level with
Mhm.
women shooters across the country. And that is, like I said, it's really been a gift to be a part of that organization.
That is so cool. I love it. I loved having Robin on, Robin Sandoval's. She was a treat, really, to have
She's a
on,
force of
so
nature. That woman
yes, she
is a
is.
force of nature. She's so inspiring. Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. So last thing before we go, because I wanna be respectful of your time, if people wanna train with you, Tatiana, where
Mhm.
do they go? Where will you be, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh my gosh, I will be all over the place at the end of the year. You can go to my website, TatianaWhitlock.com. I tried to make it hard. It's just my name. TatianaWhitlock.com. And my schedule through the end of the year is posted. If you're a Girl and a Gun member, you can gain access to me through the Shooting Journal, and we do live streaming trainings for our membership on a multitude of things throughout every month. So we do virtual training for our members, as well as retreats and getaways and national conference. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah,
There's a lot
there's a
going
lot.
on. I do I do offer virtual private lessons for folks on demand, and I do a lot of my lectures through live webinars as well. And some of those are posted and available for registrations currently through the end of the year.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Well, we made it through the hour. You made it through the hour, Tatiana. Is it
Yeah.
bedtime yet?
Oh, ask her.
You don't get to
Right?
decide.
No, it's not up to me.
Well, you've been such a good sport, and so has she. We appreciate that you've taken the time with us tonight. I know we had a lot of comments and a lot of people watching, so I think it was a win for all of us here, and you were just a pleasure to have on. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, so next week we are going to have Ed Monk. We've had Ed Monk on before. He's with Last Resort Firearms Training, but Ed he is an expert, I would say, in the field of active shooter response. And if you have not seen some of Ed Monk's work or listened to some of his lectures, I would encourage you to go back, search our YouTube channel or Rumble channel, and look at our past episode with Ed Monk. He's going to be back on again next week. He has been a police officer, a school teacher, a firearms trainer. He is a firearms trainer and an Army officer. So he has a diverse background to draw from. And he's done a lot of research, a lot of writing, and he provides training to schools and churches and law enforcement on active shooter threats. And he's been doing that for over a decade. So he's definitely someone that you want to pay attention to, you want to listen to, and he's going to have some potentially life-saving information for you next week. So I encourage you to tune in for that one. That will be on, oh man, that's going to be in July, guys. Next week it's July. So that'll be on July 5th next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Hope to see you then. Until then, take care.